The day started like any other. All the hawkers under the bridge came out early with their different goods, smiling and laughing with each other. Among them was Hope, a young woman with determined eyes and a heavy tray of roasted groundnuts sitting pretty on her head. She was so agile and smart. Her agility baffled everyone under the bridge. They named her Tigress because of the way she ran after moving cars, or wove her way through the throng of cars. Her hawking prowess at times surprised the passengers in the bus, but Hope was never surprised at all. It was a habit she had mastered after so many years of hawking under the bridge. So each time people advise her on the way she runs after a moving vehicle, she would always smile and tell them that she knew the bridge as well as she knew the lines on her own hands. She'd been hawking here for as long as she could remember, ever since she'd been a child, her life one of quiet struggle and daily survival. Today, Hope felt indifferent about everything. There was no inclination for hawking. The bridge seemed somehow to her, and she sensed something happened, something she didn't know. Just as Hope tried to make her way towards an approaching bus, a white Sienna speed past her. People jumped inside the nearby bushes in horror. Some left their goods as they ran for their life. The car tumbled and hurtled into a truck parked under the bridge. The impact was thunderous, the sound of metal crunching against metal reverberating through the air. People screamed in their loudest voices and came out immediately. Hope's heart pounded as she ran to the scene, her tray abandoned behind her. But what she saw as she approached the wreck made her stomach turn. It made her question the kind of life people had chosen to live. Rather than rushing to help the accident victims, the crowd were busy snapping photos and recording videos of the mangled car and the victims, just for social media content. Some people were even rifling through the wreckage, searching for the victims, taking their phones, money, and other valuables. Hope couldn't swallow her anger. "Where are your humanities? Where are your consciences?" she screamed, her voice shaking. "These people need help. They need our help." She spun around and noticed that no one was even listening to her. The crowd seemed oblivious, their eyes fixed on getting the best picture and videos of the helpless people in the ground. When she lamented in tears again, a man in a worn-out shirt turned to her with anger. "Why don't you help them if you care so much? You, this little girl, will never allow us to rest under this bridge. Good Samaritan," he taunted, shoving a handful of cash into his pocket. Hope shook her head in disbelief. She moved forward and said, "Please, someone. These people are dying. They need help." A woman nearby shrugged, glancing at the car with a dismissive wave. "Are you an ambulance that will take them to the mortuary? Answer me. Can't you see that they are all dead? And even if they're not, who wants police trouble? Don't you know your country? If you take them to the hospital and they die, the police will hold you responsible just to extort money from you." Hope knew that the woman was right, but she couldn't stop herself from offering her help. Her hands trembled as she stepped closer to the victims, scanned them one by one, hoping against hope that someone was still alive. And then she saw it, a faint movement. A guy who was one of the victims moved his hand. Hope's heart jumped into her stomach. Firstly, she takes steps forward, knelt beside the car, reaching out to touch the man's hand. "He's alive," she cried, turning back to the crowd. "Please, I can't do this alone. This man is still alive. Somebody help me." But no one moved. They murmured and groaned on how selfish Hope was. Some said that they didn't know what made her think she was special. Many detested her behavior, which they called, "I too know." Hope stood transfixed at the spot, helplessness with her two hands across her breast. Then, she noticed a Kiki driver who stopped to see what had happened. Without a second thought, she ran over to him, her voice thick with desperation. "Please, I need your help. There's a man in that car. He's still alive. We have to get him to the hospital." The driver rolled his eyes and a smirk. "You want me to get involved in this mess? Why didn't any of the drivers take him to hospital?" The young Kiki driver questioned absent-mindedly. "I don't know. They all refused. I have been trying to flag down a bus, but none wants to stop. Because no one wants to get involved in what she doesn't know. Leave them. Very soon police will come with an ambulance to take their bodies out. The one alive might die before the police arrival. And so what? What do you want me to do? Go and look for another Kiki drive, please? Please help me. I know you can help. Hope begged with her two palms raised intertwined. You want me to help you? The Kiki driver asked, and Hope nodded her head. It's going to cost you a lot. Give me 3,000 naira. Hope's heart leaped, but she reached into her bag. She handed him everything she had made for the day. And now it was the Kiki driver's turn to be surprised. Was the victim her brother? He thought inwardly. He looked at the money, raising an eyebrow, but finally gave a quick nod. Together, they lifted the injured man into the Kiki. Hope placed the man's head on her lap, hoping he would make it. As they sped away from the scene, Hope glanced back, watching the crowd. Some of them were angry with her, while some didn't show their expression. By the time they reached the hospital, Hope was covered in sweat, her hands stained with the man's blood. She had never been in such a situation before. She darted inside the reception room, alerted the nurse at the room, and both rushed outside. With the help of the Kiki drive, the injured man was taken to a room for immediate assistance. Doctors and nurses moved swiftly through the halls, and all felt overwhelming. Hope had never been to such a big hospital before. She stood alone in the waiting room, pacing rhythmically around. She watched the doctors and nurses disappear down the hall, a strange sense of relief washing over her. She had done everything she could. Now, it was up to the doctors. Hope waited, sitting on a hard plastic chair, her mind racing. Hours seemed to pass as she sat there, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She couldn't shake the image of the crowd, the way they had stood by, watching, recording, as if the man's life meant nothing, as if those on the ground were not human beings like them. Later, one of the doctors came out with good news. He said to Hope that the man was out of danger. She could go home and come back the next day. Hope thanked her God and the doctor. Eventually, she rose to leave, exhausted, happy, and emotionally drained. As she made her way home, the weight of the day's events settled heavily on her shoulders. She dreaded facing her mother, knowing there would be consequences for abandoning her work and spending her money on a stranger. I hope you are enjoying the stories. Please leave a comment below and subscribe to my channel. Thanks. When she reached home, her worst fears were confirmed. Her mother was waiting for her. A storm of anger etched into her features. She stood by the door, her hands on her hips, her gaze fierce. Hope, where have you been? Her mother demanded, her voice like thunder. You think you can just leave your work, waste all your money on some stranger, and come back here like nothing happened? Hope tried to explain, her voice trembling as she recounted the events of the day. But her mother's expression only grew darker, her anger spilling over like a dam that had burst. You think this family can afford your foolishness? She spat, grabbing a broom and waving it at her daughter. Get out. Don't come back here until you've earned back every penny you wasted today. But Mama, I was only trying to help, Hope said. May thunder scatter that hole you call mouth. You wanted to help, right? Are we going to eat help? Were you the only one under that bridge? You wanted to show that you are wiser than others, foolish girl. She went inside and slammed the door. Hope's heart broke as she stumbled out into the night, tears streaming down her face. She wandered through the city, the harsh reality of her mother's words echoing in her mind. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. Finally, she found her way to her friend's house, knocking hesitantly on the door. Her friend opened it, her face softening when she saw Hope's tear-streaked face. What happened? Her friend asked, pulling her inside and wrapping her in a warm embrace. Hope told her everything, and her friend listened patiently, offering words of comfort and understanding. She promised to help Hope get back on her feet, to lend her some money so she could start selling again. As Hope lay on her friend's thin mattress that night, she stared up at the ceiling, wondering what would become of her. She had risked everything to save a stranger's life, and now she was alone, cast out by her own family. But deep down, despite the fear and uncertainty, she felt a quiet sense of pride. She had done the right thing, and no matter the cost, she would carry that knowledge with her. That was exactly what her father taught her, always to help those in need. If her father was alive, her mother wouldn't have thrown her out in the night. Hope regretted the awful death that took her father away. the merciless sickness that persisted until her father was gone. Her father had been her best friend, her teacher, and her mentor. Despite him being a poor man, he knew what being a good person was all about, and he made sure Hope took after him. Many times he had told Hope that one day a rich man would come to marry her. Hope would always laugh and say, "Which rich man will marry a dirty hawker like me, Papa? Your name is Hope. Don't lose hope," the old man always replied, laughing. Remembering this made Hope happy and sad simultaneously. She tried to subdue the tears forcing itself out of her eyes. The moment she sneezed, her friend jerked off the mattress. "Hope, why are you still awake?" Her friend questioned. "Nothing. I am just thinking about my father. I don't know why my mother hates me so much. I have been enduring everything, but it is becoming too much. My mother treats me as if I am not one of her children. Hope, some mothers are like that. Let that not bother you. Your father is gone, and you need to accept it. I wish he was the one alive," Hope said. "You are not God," her friend laughed. The next morning, Hope awoke to the sound of traffic outside her friend's small apartment, the hum of the city already in full swing. She felt the weight of the previous day pressing down on her, but she pushed it aside, determined to get back on her feet. Her friend handed her a small bundle of bills, smiling gently as she encouraged Hope to start fresh. "Take this," her friend said, pressing the money into her hand. "It's not much, but it'll help you buy a few things to sell today. You've always been strong, Hope. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Don't lose hope." Hope smiled sweetly. She just reminded her of her father with that last statement. "Your name is Hope. Don't lose hope." That was her father's words. Hope felt tears prick at her eyes, but she swallowed them down, nodding in gratitude. She set out early, buying a modest supply of goods to hawk under the bridge once more. The familiar rhythm of the city began to soothe her, and as she called out to potential customers, she felt a sense of normalcy. Returning, as the day wore on, Hope found herself glancing toward the hospital, her thoughts drifting to the young man she had saved. She wondered if he had made it through the night, if her efforts had been enough to save his life. As the sun began to set, she couldn't resist the urge to visit the hospital just to check on him. When she arrived, she hesitated, feeling out of place among the sterile halls and bustling staff. She approached a nurse at the front desk, her voice barely a whisper as she asked about the man she had brought in the day before. "Oh, him?" the nurse replied, a look of surprise crossing her face. "His family came this morning and transferred him to a private hospital. They said they wanted him to have the best care possible." Hope's heart sank, a strange mixture of relief and disappointment washing over her. She was glad he was receiving the care he needed, but a part of her had hoped to see him again, to know for certain that he was all right. "Thank you," she murmured, turning to leave. As she stepped outside, she took a deep breath, letting the cool evening air fill her lungs. She had done what she could, and now it was time to move on. Months passed, and Hope resumed her routine, her life settling back into its familiar rhythm. She returned to her mother's home eventually, though the relationship remained strained. Her mother had barely forgiven her for the incident, still resenting the money she had spent on a stranger. One evening, as Hope was packing up her goods under the bridge, she noticed a tall figure moving through the crowd, scanning each face as though searching for someone. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the man. It was the stranger she had saved, the one from the accident. He approached her with a warm smile, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Hope," he said, his voice soft but filled with sincerity. "I've been looking for you for weeks. I wanted to thank you, properly, for saving my life." "How did you know me?" "You were unconscious," Hope muttered with a shaky voice. "I have been searching for you. I asked people about the girl who had helped an accident victim. I have been coming here for the past 2 weeks. I asked them to bring me to your house, but they all refused." Hope felt a blush rise to her cheeks, her heart fluttering at his words. "I'm just glad you're all right. I have been sick for a while, that's why you didn't see me," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "I hope you are feeling better now," the man asked, and Hope nodded her head. He introduced himself as Henry, a name that struck her as both elegant and noble. He explained that he had been on his way to a business meeting that day, when the accident changed everything. He had been given a second chance, and he owed it all to her. As they talked, Henry listened intently to her story, learning about her life, her struggles, and her quiet resilience. He was captivated by her strength, her kindness, and her unwavering sense of justice. In that moment, a bond began to form between them, one that neither could fully understand but both felt deeply. Days turned into weeks, and their friendship blossomed, evolving into something neither had anticipated. Henry would visit Hope regularly, bringing her small gifts, sharing stories of his life, and listening to her hopes and dreams. They became each other's confidants, their worlds intertwining in ways that defied the expectations of their separate lives. "Hope, Hope, come here," her mother snarled. Hope came out from the kitchen, staring at her mother. "I heard that there's a young man that always comes to the bridge to see you. If you get pregnant, you won't have the child in my house. You better mind yourself. I don't want to hear it again." Hope nodded her head. From that day, Hope started avoiding Henry. Whenever she saw his car approaching, she would lurk herself behind a damaged car. For more than 2 weeks, Hope continued like this, yet every day, Henry would come back to look for her. One day he decided to come without his car. He changed his outlook. Hope thought he was a customer, but when she got closer to him, her eyes widened in shock. "Henry, where is your car?" she questioned. "So my intuition was right. You have been avoiding me. Why?" Hope explained what her mother had said to her. She told him about the one her mother did to her the day she took him to the hospital. Henry was sorry for everything, so he promised to take their relationship to another level. And then, one evening under the glow of the city lights, he slipped a ring onto her finger, asking her to be his forever. Hope's heart soared as she accepted Henry's proposal, her dreams coming alive before her eyes. She had never imagined that someone like him could love someone like her, that she could leave behind the hardships of her life and step into a future filled with hope. Hawkers perched around smiling with her. As their engagement became official, Henry invited her to meet his family. They traveled to a grand estate on the outskirts of the city, where Hope was awed by the vast gardens, the towering pillars, and the beauty of the sprawling mansion. It was then that Henry revealed the truth to her. He was the prince of Obama Kingdom, a small but influential kingdom steeped in tradition. His father, the late king, had left a legacy of strength and leadership, one that Henry was destined to continue. But to ascend the throne, he was expected to marry a woman of noble birth, someone who could stand by his side as he took on the responsibilities of royalty. Hope's heart sank as she listened, her fingers gripping Henry's hand tightly. She knew this revelation would change everything, that her simple life and humble background would never be accepted by his family. But Henry assured her of his love, promising to fight for her, to stand by her side no matter the cost. When they entered the grand hall, Hope was introduced to Henry's mother, the Queen. Her gaze was icy, her expression one of barely concealed disdain. She dismissed Hope with a wave, refusing to acknowledge her as anything more than a servant girl, a commoner unworthy of her son. Henry pleaded with his mother, but she remained unmoved, her voice cold as she declared, "A prince cannot marry a hawker. It is beneath him, beneath us. I will not allow it." "But I love her, Mom. She saved my life. Where was all your sleigh, babe, when I was there under the bridge gasping for air? Hope is my last hope. She is the woman I love," Henry stated. "Henry, I don't want to know who saved you or who didn't. All I know is that nobody would not step her foot into this compound as your wife." "Why? Why won't she step foot here?" "Because I am your mother and I said so." "No. You are not my mother. You are my stepmother." His words came out like a bomb, hitting the Queen on her chest. The Queen stared perplexed. Henry had never shouted at her. He had never referred to her as stepmother. Henry was 10 years old when his mother died and 11 when his father got married to his second wife. The Queen had always treated him like her child. And now, because of a riffraff Henry had reminded her that she wasn't his mother, she swallowed hard, waiting for Henry to apologize. Henry scanned her from head to toes and said, "I must marry her whether you like it or not." Despite his mother's disapproval, Henry refused to give up on hope. They pressed forward, determined to be together, even as the Queen's disapproval cast a shadow over their happiness. They held a quiet traditional marriage, attended only by a few friends and family members who supported their union. Hope's mother wasn't also much in support of the marriage, although her own was a mere wickedness. She wanted Henry to marry Hope's younger sister instead of Hope. Henry's refusal also made her angry. Hope struggled to navigate the complexities of her new life, the expectations and scrutiny that came with being the prince's wife. The Queen's disdain was ever present, her words cutting, her gaze cold. She made it clear that Hope was unwelcome, that she would never be part of their world. But Hope bore the weight of her new role with grace, her strength carrying her through the darkest moments. She refused to let the Queen's cruelty break her, determined to prove that love and resilience could overcome even the harshest judgments. Days passed, and despite the Queen's attempts to drive her away, Hope remained resolute. She continued to support Henry, learning the customs and traditions of his people, and striving to prove herself worthy of her role by his side. Henry's coronation is on the way. Hope was eagerly waiting for the special day, the day she would become the Queen. Many people visited the palace because of the occasion. One evening, Hope's mother paid a visit to the palace, determined to see her daughter's new life firsthand. She arrived, her face a mixture of pride and concern, and Hope welcomed her with open arms. They walked through the gardens, Hope sharing the beauty of the estate, the details of her life as Henry's wife, the preparation of the coronation, and the challenges she faced under the Queen's watchful eye. She told her mother how the Queen treated her like a nobody, how she talks to her like a palace maid. Her mother was furious. "Show me that Queen, let me tear her mouth like a lion. Did we beg Henry for marriage? Why won't she allow you to rest in your house?" Hope calmed her mother down. Her mother's outburst made her happy. It was her first time seeing her mother support her in life. She smiled and handed a cup of juice to her mother. After drinking the juice, Hope said to her mother, "Come, let me show you what Henry bought for me for the coronation." They came across a grand portrait in one of the halls, a painting of the late king in his prime, his gaze noble and strong. Hope's mother stopped in her tracks, staring at the portrait with a strange intensity. Her eyes filled with recognition, and a flood of memories seemed to wash over her. Turning to Hope, she asked, "Do you know much about this king? Where did he come from before he took the throne?" Hope shook her head, intrigued by her mother's reaction. "Not much. Henry told me some stories, but I've never asked too much about his past." Her mother's face grew pensive, and after a moment, she told Hope that the face looked familiar. She asked about any of the Queen's portraits, but they were all inside the Queen's room. Hope told her mother that she wouldn't be able to get the portrait for her. "When the Queen comes back, let me know. I want to see her," her mother said. Hope had a growing sense of unease settling in her chest. There was something familiar in her mother's voice. She wondered what connection her mother could possibly have to Henry's family. But before she could ask, her mother brushed the topic aside, insisting she would love to meet the woman who treats her daughter like nobody. The Queen returned from a brief trip to the city, her mood sour, and her anger simmering just beneath the surface. She had heard rumors of Hope's mother visiting the palace, and her resentment grew, believing that Hope was dragging her family into their royal household. "You dirty pig, do not bring any of your family here again unless I will make this life a living hell for you," she said to Hope, and Hope nodded. When Hope told her mother that the Queen was back, her mother expressed a desire to meet her, determined to confront the woman who had treated her daughter so poorly. Hope was hesitant, fearing what might happen, but her mother was insistent, her gaze steely with resolve. The meeting was tense from the start, the Queen's expression one of disdain as Hope's mother approached. But when their eyes met, both women froze, recognition sparking in their gazes. They stood there, staring at each other, the weight of years of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. "Hope," her mother finally spoke, her voice trembling, "this woman, is she your mother-in-law, Hope's mother asked, pointing at the queen. Hope nodded, smiling. You mean that Mary is the woman who has been treating you badly? Hope was confused. She didn't know when her mother had gone deaf, or why she was repeating herself. Hope's mother clapped her hands. Her eyebrows widened apart. She inhaled and exhaled heavily. Then she turned to the queen. After so many years, Mary, you didn't keep your promise, and because of you I nearly lost my marriage. Why? The queen was transfixed, staring at her like someone who had seen a ghost. As they were talking, the prince entered. He gave his mother a gentle nudge. Mom, what's the problem? He asked. The queen was startled. Her eyes widened in shock. She had not gotten her mouth back. Hope, she's your mother. She's the one who left you with me all those years ago. Hope's mother said. Who, ma'am? Hope retorted. The queen. She is your mother. Hope's mother pointed out towards the queen. Hope's heart stopped, her mind reeling as the words sank in. She turned to the queen, her mouth dry, struggling to comprehend what she had just heard. Is it true? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Are you my mother? The queen's face twisted in a mixture of shock and anger. Her carefully guarded secrets laid bare in an instant. She looked at Hope, her expression one of deep-seated resentment. Yes, she replied, her voice cold. You are my daughter, but you were never supposed to come back into my life. I left you behind for a reason. Hope's world shattered, her heart breaking as she realized the truth of her own identity. She had spent her entire life believing that she was a burden, that her existence was an inconvenience, and now, standing before her, was the woman who had abandoned her, the woman who had chosen power and status over her own flesh and blood. Hope shook her head and ran back to her room. Her mother and the prince followed her immediately, begging her not to harm herself. Hope locked the door, sank on the floor, and began to wail like a baby. Her mother and the prince knocked repeatedly on the door, but she didn't open the door. The queen sat on the couch, her face buried inside her palms. Over the following days, the story of the queen's past began to unfold, layer by painful layer. She had been a young woman once, full of dreams and aspirations, and she had met a man who had shown her the world beyond her wildest imaginings. They had fallen in love, and she had given birth to a daughter, a child she had loved deeply but had been forced to leave behind. When the late king had come into her life, he had offered her a chance to escape her past, to rise above the struggles of her youth and become someone of consequence. She had taken that opportunity, but it had come at a cost that she had paid with a heavy heart and a guilty conscience. At first, when she met the late king, she didn't know that the man was a king. As their relationship grew, the late king began to make his intentions clear. He told her that he was a king and would love to marry her. The queen, out of fear, never told him about her child. She planned it with her neighbor to look after the child for her. She also promised to come back for the child, but she never did. That child had stayed with her neighbor till she got married. Now, standing before Hope, she felt the weight of her choices crashing down on her, the ghosts of her past refusing to be silenced any longer. Henry was devastated, caught between the woman he loved and the mother he had once idolized. He struggled to understand how someone who had always seemed so strong, so unbreakable, could have carried such a painful secret for so long. He turned to Hope, his heart aching for her, and swore that he would stand by her side, no matter what. In the weeks that followed, the queen withdrew, retreating into herself as she wrestled with the consequences of her actions. She watched as Hope and Henry grew closer, their bond unbreakable, their love a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. She saw the strength in Hope, the same strength she had once possessed, but had allowed to slip away in her pursuit of status and power. One evening, as the sun rested on top of the tall palm tree, the queen sought out Hope, her steps hesitant, her heart heavy. She found her sitting in the garden, surrounded by the soft glow of twilight, and for the first time, she spoke to her not as a queen, but as a mother. Hope, she said, her voice thick with emotion, I cannot undo the choices I made, the pain I caused. But I want you to know, I am sorry. I am sorry for leaving you, for abandoning you when you needed me most. I was selfish, and I allowed my own desires to cloud my judgment. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope, in time, you can find it in your heart to see me not as a monster, but as a flawed human being." Hope looked at her, her heart torn between anger and compassion. She saw the regret in her mother's eyes, the pain that had haunted her for years, and she shook her head. She knew that forgiveness would not come easily, but she also knew that holding on to resentment would only deepen the wounds they both carried. At that moment, Hope made a choice. She reached out, taking her mother's hand in her own, and whispered, "I cannot forget what you did, but I will try to forgive, for my own sake, and for the sake of the family we could still become." After their emotional exchange, Hope and the Queen began the slow journey toward healing their fractured relationship. Hope struggled to reconcile the image of the cold, spiteful Queen with the vulnerable woman who had opened up to her in the garden. Although she knew that forgiveness would be a process, she was determined to try, for her own peace and for the sake of the life she wanted to build with Henry. Henry, seeing the gradual shift in his mother, began to hope that they could one day be a family. He devoted himself to Hope, supporting her as she navigated the complexities of her relationship with the Queen and helping her learn the customs she would need to fulfill her role as his wife. They spent time with the villagers, hosting small gatherings and helping those in need. Hope's compassion and kindness won the hearts of the people, who began to see her as a future queen, regardless of her background. As the months passed, Hope's mother also became a frequent visitor to the palace. She and the Queen spent long hours together, reminiscing about the past and confronting the choices they had made. Although they had taken different paths, their shared history forged an unlikely friendship. The Queen learned to respect the woman who had raised her daughter, and in turn, Hope's mother began to see the Queen not as a rival, but as a mother who had made difficult decisions in pursuit of a better life. The Queen decided to make amends publicly, organizing a grand ceremony to formally introduce Hope to the village as Henry's chosen bride. It was a gesture not only of acceptance, but also of acknowledgement for Hope's resilience and kindness. Villagers from all over the kingdom came to witness the ceremony, eager to see the woman who had captured the prince's heart. They all knew that their prince was married, but the Queen had not made it official. Dressed in traditional attire, Hope stood by Henry's side as the Queen spoke to the crowd. She admitted her past mistakes, confessing her initial rejection of Hope and her struggle to come to terms with the choices she had made. Her voice broke as she spoke of her daughter, the child she had abandoned and now sought to embrace fully. She looked at Hope, tears in her eyes, and asked for her forgiveness once more. Hope, moved by the Queen's vulnerability, stepped forward, taking her mother's hands. She spoke to the crowd about forgiveness, about the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds, and about the strength of family. She declared that she was proud to stand before them, not only as Henry's wife, but as the daughter of the woman who had once been the Queen's friend and confidant. The crowd erupted in applause, their support and approval washing over Hope as she stood tall, her heart swelling with gratitude and hope. As the ceremony came to an end, Hope and Henry began preparations for their white wedding. Now the Queen had declared them husband and wife, and the only thing remaining was the white wedding. The village buzzed with excitement, and the palace was alive with activity as friends and family gathered to celebrate. Hope's mother helped her prepare, sharing stories of her own youth, and they laughed and cried together as they reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Despite the happiness surrounding them, Hope remained nervous. She feared that the Queen might still harbor some reservations, that old insecurities might resurface and disrupt their newfound peace. Sensing her daughter's anxiety, Hope's mother reassured her, reminding her of the strength she had shown and the love she had earned. On the day of the wedding, the Queen approached Hope with a small, delicate box. Inside was a necklace, a family heirloom that had belonged to Henry's grandmother. The Queen placed it around Hope's neck, her hands trembling, and told her that it was a symbol of her acceptance, a promise that she would support Hope and stand by her side. as a true mother and mother-in-law. Which one should I call you now, my mother or my mother-in-law? Hope chuckled. The queen ran her palms gently on her face. I am your mother and I am also Henry's mother. Call me anyone, the both laughed. Overwhelmed with emotion, Hope embraced the queen, tears streaming down her face as they held each other close. In that moment, the last remnants of their pain and resentment melted away, replaced by a bond forged through forgiveness and love. The wedding was a grand celebration, filled with music, dancing, and the joyous laughter of friends and family. As Hope and Henry exchanged their vows, the villagers cheered, their faces glowing with pride for the woman who had won their hearts. The queen watched, her heart full as she witnessed the love between her son and daughter-in-law, a love that had defied the odds and brought their family together. After the ceremony, Hope and Henry took a moment to stand alone on a hill overlooking the village. They held hands, gazing at the world below, feeling the weight of their journey lift from their shoulders. They knew that challenges would still lie ahead, but together, they were ready to face whatever the future held. As they descended the hill, they saw the queen and Hope's mother waiting for them. Side by side, their faces softened by the evening light. The four of them stood together, united by love, forgiveness, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. For Hope, life had come full circle. She had found her family, forged a new path, and discovered a love that could weather any storm. And as she walked into her new life, she knew that she was finally home. Hello, champions. I hope you enjoyed the stories. Please leave a comment below and subscribe to my channel. Thanks.